were raised in North Alabama.
That's right.
Right.
Marshall County.
Marshall County.
Yep.
Seth Burton, running for U.S. Senate, is here.
It's great to be here, Troy. Back in the Our Town studios. I love it.
Yeah, you were here 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, with Thad.
And shout out to Thad Forster before we get too far into this Patriot to the Core podcast.
Fantastic time.
I had him on episode number 5 of my show.
Wow.
This will be like 141 or something, and a long time ago. You know, I was just starting out, and I'm like, hey, man.
How'd you guys meet?
We go to church, the same church, and we met on our missions in Salt Lake City.
Excellent.
He was English speaking. I was a Spanish speaking missionary. We never like served together in the same we call like our zone. Yeah, we just knew each other.
Yeah.
We were leaders in respective zones, and got to meet him. I knew like 2 or 3 guys that were from Alabama.
Yeah.
So then when I moved here, he was the only one I knew in like the whole state.
So he was your friend when you came here. Yeah.
So I started the podcast, and I found out I didn't know anything about his brother, Mark.
And that had already happened.
That was in 2010. And so we kind of, caught up on life a little bit,
Did you know Mark before?
No.
You didn't? Okay, so you never crossed his path.
But man, I've met, and we'll talk about this for you, his family is just solid gold.
Yeah.
They're from Haleville.
Yeah.
Look, I try to pronounce it real good, right? And mom and dad, like if you come across anybody that knows the Foresters, they just rave about mom and dad. And I've had Bo Rivera as a dermatologist in town, and he was neighbors with them.
Right.
And I had him on the show, and he was just talking about what great neighbors and friends they were, and just all the siblings. I know his older brother Joseph, who was I guess he was a doctor in the military, right?
Okay.
Now he's an anesthesiologist.
I haven't gotten to meet him yet.
Oh man,
Thad's the only one I've met, and if the family if he's a reflection of the family, it's true gold. Yeah.
Just a solid family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so Seth Burton's here.
Yes.
And let me mention one thing. Have you been to Valentina's Pizzeria by chance?
I have
you ever
not.
heard of it?
No.
It is 4 miles west of here.
Okay.
It is over in Hampton Cove. There's Tatora's.
Yeah, I've been there.
Joe Carlucci, the owner, he worked at Tatora's because he knew that guy. I can't remember the guy's name. Tony or Jason. I can't remember. Last name's Moore.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't remember this guy's first name. But Joe's been on the show 3 or 4 times, and it's a great story. Kind of out of New York, and just in the pizza business, right? So anyway, he opened up Valentina's, kind of out in the middle of nowhere there in Athens, but it's all growing. All these developments
he planned ahead,
and they're killing it. They're doing really good, and so
Valentina's Pizza.
They're a sponsor of the show, and
excellent,
and I really appreciate them and their support.
Aaron, you heard us talk about him last time. That pizza's his favorite food, so we'll go do a date night there with 3 amigos.
That's your son, right? Your youngest.
My youngest. He loves pizza.
Oh, it's on a different level. Like literally, I just interviewed their GM. Cameron was in here because Joe's been on the show 3 or 4 times.
Right.
He goes out. He won Pizza Maker of the Year at Vegas.
Wow.
Like for like non-traditional, traditional. You kind of step into these worlds, these industries of things, and he's just a wonderful pizza maker. So and like I told him, like we've all had tons of pizza in our life. It's
too much.
And I went there the first time. This is before he came on the show. We just went there, and you take a few bites, and you're like, whoa, this is different, And I'm sure there's a lot of good pizzerias out there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, do you live close to one?
Yeah.
And it's definitely something you want to eat there in the restaurant. Like don't let, even by the time it gets home, food gets cold. All right, Seth Burton, storied Navy career, a commanding officer of 2 different submarines,
2
right?
different ones. Yes, sir.
And three boys. And can I talk about, so your youngest one's Aaron, right?
Aaron,
24.
Right. He's 24.
He's 24 now, Down syndrome?
Down syndrome. Turns 25 on May 28th, so he's very excited.
Okay, so it's coming up.
He's going to go see a musical at Fox Theater in Atlanta.
Oh, really?
So, Beauty and the Beast. That's what he wants to do for his birthday.
Is the whole family going?
Yeah, the 3 of us.
3 of you?
Danette and Aaron and myself.
And then the connection that you have with that is his youngest boy has Down syndrome, right? And you said that you guys didn't know until 5 weeks after he was born?
Right. So he was born in late May, and then, the pediatrician, she said, looking back, she said, I saw some indicators those first few weeks because, babies look like babies. And then, but she wanted to do some blood work and didn't even tell us why yet. But they did some genetic analysis of it and told us about early July is when they brought us in with a genetic counselor and sat us down and explained to us what they had discovered. And we didn't believe it at first. It's like, because he seemed so normal. And the only thing looking back now that we kind of noticed was different from our older two boys was just the looseness of his joints. When we would change his diapers, he felt much more, like the tone and the normal, what you would feel when you pick up a knee or something.
Really?
And so that made sense looking back, but the first 5 weeks we had no idea. Gotcha. Which for my wife, she'll tell you she loved, that finding out at that time because, if you find out during the pregnancy, it's just an extra stress. So she was able to just go through a normal pregnancy and enjoy life and just get ready to welcome our third child. And that was post my cancer. So that was a big thing where we were just very, just convincing her to have another child with the risk that I kind of posed her to leave her alone with children that was a big win. I kind of had to bribe her a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. But when he was, when we found out, we were able to, just process it. And I think I told Thad last time we developed we did a 48 hours of kind of mourning the things that we wouldn't ever have with him, but then we just jumped all in and it was hard. It's totally different. It's a very different experience raising someone that's just challenged every step of the way. But boy, it grounds you. It makes you realize, okay, anything that I'm going to complain about, I have no grounds to complain about it.
So back then they didn't have some sort of testing during the prenatal process?
They actually did. And usually, and this is where my wife is very glad that, God was kind of protecting her and just letting her enjoy the pregnancy. Because, usually you get more false positives that something's wrong and it stirs up anxiousness and everything. So you usually get false positives and less false negatives. We were actually one of those false negatives.
Really?
That, the test didn't show the indications that he had Down syndrome. And so we never even thought about it until 5 weeks in and they sat us down and said, okay, we need to tell you something.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this. I know I don't know you that well.
Right.
But I know that Thad's just kind of the same way where you just have a feeling about someone, right? You can just connect with people and who is genuine and who's not. But I will say in a lot of what we'll talk about tonight, and my thoughts I'll share with you are just kind of, I'm 50 years old. I've lived, a good amount of years, seen a lot of things, and most of my stuff, my opinions and stuff come from observation, right?
Absolutely.
Of just of life and people. And I will say of all of the, there is something special about the parents of a child that has special needs or Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And I say that because I've known a lot of families.
Right.
And every one of them, the mom and the dad are just solid parents.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you think about from a religious perspective, and I firmly believe that we all chose to come here. The plan was presented. Yeah. We chose to come here. And I also think we have even though we don't remember, our Heavenly Father is careful with who he grants his spirit children to. Right. And to, I would challenge anyone to think about that. Think about like every family you've ever known and what were the mom and dad like? Just really good people. So I know I don't know you that well, but when you are a parent of a child like that, like I think you're in a different class.
No, I appreciate that. It means a lot. And I'll tell you that we feel like we've won the lottery a lot of times, because the life we've lived, you just learn to live through hardship. That's life. Everybody has hardships, and having Aaron presented its own hardships, but by golly, it was so much more goodness than hardships. And it shapes you as a family. It shapes the siblings. The siblings are better people because they learn how to love differently and learn how to look, it gauges when they're sitting there complaining about things, it helps them reset and think, okay, why am I complaining about this? Not that they'll, we're still all human and we still make mistakes, but we think we won the lottery because Aaron is, we have the saying, he makes us all better. And that absolutely rings true.
Yeah. The other things that I mentioned, I think we have a lot of things in common. I've been married 28 years.
28.
And we've been single income the whole time.
Yeah.
Actually, well, my wife worked for maybe 3 weeks after we had our first child, and then she was like, and I was like, you should probably stay home. I'm struggling. I was trying to go to school and and I don't know, work and take care of. I was like, let's just change our plan here.
It's hard.
But kind of, and that's been tough. When we'll talk about your career and your 3 boys, and the commitment that you and your wife have had to raise them, right, and move around.
Yep.
With Aaron, right? And I know you'd said he's become a really good traveler, and he's very durable.
He's fantastic. He just spent the whole week on the road last week doing South Alabama campaigning, and he was everywhere. And he's the first person to give people hugs and shake their hands, and he tries to give them food all the time. So he's just he loves being out there meeting with people.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm just going to quickly go through because you sent this to me. The places you've lived. So you were born. Where's Maryville, Tennessee? That's where
it's near born. Knoxville.
Knoxville.
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad was at that point. He was an young engineer at Alcoa, mechanical engineer.
And then you lived in where's Grant, Alabama?
That is if you go out toward Gunnersville. It's like between here and Gunnersville. Okay. So we actually lived on the mailing address was Grant. But we if you were our closest neighbor was 4.5 miles away. So we lived right on the Tennessee River, and my dad just bought a big farm and farmed for a decade until he got kind of financially driven out of it.
Okay.
And so that's where I spent most of my childhood. So Grant is just what I tell everybody because that was the address, but it was out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't interact with many people until I started kindergarten, which was kind of fun because then I thought my mom was abandoning me when she put me in kindergarten.
Was it like a long bus ride or car ride?
It was car ride. Buses won't go where we were. So my parents had to either drive me, and then that ultimately I ended up doing elementary school in New Hope because my grandfather was a coach and principal at the time. So I did 1st through 3rd grade in New Hope, and then I went to Gurley and did 4th through 7th grade out there because my grandfather retired and my dad was still farming. So they sent us with my grandmother who was teaching at Gurley. She was a guidance counselor and math teacher stuff over there. So I did that up until 7th grade. Then she retired, and then my dad had to figure out where to put us in school. And that's when we moved into Huntsville and finished up school in Huntsville.
And are these your mom's parents or your dad's parents?
My dad's parents.
Okay.
My mom's parents lived down in Gadsden, Etowah County my whole life.
And you had mentioned you're very close to your grandparents.
Very.
Very. So, and that's just kind of through, they lived close by where she was a teacher.
Yeah, they literally they moved to the farm where we lived. So this is my dad's grandparents. So they lived right next door to us. They built in 1976, they built it's where my parents live now. It's a log cabin out on the farm. So they built it right next. We originally lived in and you probably saw it online. If you've looked online, we lived in this was a barn before we moved into it, but that's what my dad cleaned up. And we had no water, no electricity. We had an outhouse. So it was the epitome of, living in rural Alabama. And that's where I spent my first few years. And then we upgraded to a mobile home. And that's where I lived until 8th grade when we moved into town.
Okay.
But yeah, to answer your question, I got sidetracked there. My grandparents lived right next door. So immensely just influential in my life growing up because you had great grandparents right next door as you go over and, eat their scrambled eggs in the morning. They're always investing. My granddad was in horses. He taught us gymnastics. He was a huge basketball. He was like a 3 letterman at Auburn back in the 40s.
Oh, wow.
And so he was a huge athlete. Even into his 60s and 70s, he could do more than most people can in their 20s and 30s.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it hard to integrate into the school or be like social with kids?
It was for me at first because I just grown up very isolated. I had brothers, and that's all I knew. But then once I was exposed to the school environment, it took me some adapting to get used to it because I wasn't around anybody and because we just grew up very isolated.
What was your thing? Like, how did you kind of make friends or be known or be popular in a way? Like what was it that Seth was good at, or you wanted to ensure people knew, hey, I'm good at this thing? Yeah.
It's a great question. I've never answered that one before. I would say the 2 things that made me stand out to where people noticed me and it kind of gave me, the respect in 3rd grade, 4th grade, as you kind of go through and you have all that peer interactions and you're challenged would be academics and sports.
Okay.
I loved both of them. I thrived at it. I loved learning, loved pushing the envelope learning. So I would always be asking to work up grades. And that's where my grandmother was so fantastic, because she knew the school system, she knew the rules, and she knew when they were falsely holding me back. So she would advocate for me, even get me to where I could teach myself in classes and not even have to have a teacher. And that really allowed me to advance education-wise. And then on the other side of it, sports, I had two big brothers that were pushing me. So I was always trying to play up higher in sports. And so I would say those two things became the package that was kind of important to me to relate to other people's. I had my sports, teammates, and then I had my very academic kind of friends, and that was kind of two worlds. I liked living in all the worlds. A lot of people get into a particular kind of group, and that's what they associate. But I really loved mixing and mingling with the super athletes. They were my friends. The super smart people were my friends. The popular people, which I wasn't really in the popular group, but I loved hanging out with them and knowing them. And then the people that nobody knew, that were marginalized, I loved being with that group because they were just different. They stuck together and they took care of each other. So yeah. I look back on, a lot of people asked, who was your best friend in high school? And I had some great friends, but I didn't have any best friends other than my current wife. That was who was my closest friend in high school. But other than that, I just had a bunch of great friends across multiple groups, and that's where I felt comfortable. I didn't want to be labeled or tied to one particular, stereotype.
Yeah. Did any of those try to make the academic people? Did the sports guys make fun of you because you were so into academics, and then kind of the academics make fun of you or not accept you at times because you were doing sports? Or did
they actually didn't. It was very. I finished up at Huntsville High School. It's really a great high school to graduate from. Yeah. At least back then, and I'm sure it is still today. They were very good about it. Now there's always jokes in sure. high school, but it was never anything negative. And the smart people loved watching me go out and see that a smart guy could still shoot 3-pointers and have be on a state championship level. Not that we won, but we got to a state tournament and just had a fun run in basketball. And so
that's my buddy.
Yeah, and my teammates, they were just way better athletes than me, but they respected that I could go and get 100 on a test, and they couldn't. So it worked out well.
Kind of reminds me of Good Will Hunting when they're at that bar scene. He's like, my buddy's a wicked smart. He's a wicked smart.
That was a great scene. Yeah.
It's always fun when their friends are they're so elated that you're their friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a big honor,
Yeah. Big honor. So let's kind of fast forward to, I know you went to the Naval Academy.
Right.
And is there pedigree within the Burtons that people went into the Naval Academy, or is it kind of you were the first one?
My dad went to the Naval Academy. It's an interesting story. I'm sure he won't share or mind that I share it. He went to the Naval Academy in 1964. So he was class of 68 at the Naval Academy. And he had some various injuries that he was dealing with that was going to derail him from kind of his career objectives. And so he ended up leaving, finished up at the University of Alabama. But that all worked out because he met my mom and got married and all that stuff, and then the rest was history there. And then I went, so that always planted a seed in my mind that, hey, he went to the Naval Academy. I heard about it growing up, obviously tracked it closely in high school. That's back when David Robinson was really big in the 80s, and it was fantastic. And I was a huge basketball
I remember getting that Sports Illustrated with him on the cover.
Yeah. I mean, and I actually ended up playing on, when I was at the Naval Academy, I played with his younger brother, Chuck, that was there at the time. And so David would always come around, so I'd get to play basketball with David, and he was just huge. And that's when he was, in the NBA at that point. We'd have Danny Ferry, if you remember him from Duke. He would come around and shoot because he was from the local area. He would come shoot around there too. But the fact that I'd heard about it growing up and, saw it, then I loved watching basketball with David. And then I had this ties back to my grandparents. I had such a passion to serve the country because, I'd watched movies with my Marine grandpa, in Gadsden, all growing up. I didn't have a TV growing up, so when I would go to Grandpa's house, it was like he sat right here in the recliner. I sat on the little ottoman right in front of him as the little grandkid. He'd turn on TBS, and we'd watch, Sands of Iwo Jima, fights in Guam, Midway, whatever we were watching. We just watched it for hours together, and I'd eat my ice cream because he would go buy me a bucket of ice cream. So, so I had his influence. And then my dad's father flew airplanes in World War II, so he was a pilot, and so I had all of those influences. Then with my dad going to the Naval Academy, when I was looking at colleges toward the end of high school, I applied to multiple really good ones around the South, like Vanderbilt, Kentucky. I don't remember all of them now, but some really good schools. And then I applied to West Point and Annapolis Naval Academy, and got into all of them. So it boiled down to the last two choices was between Kentucky and the Naval Academy, and I picked the Naval Academy because of the service orientation. And then I went. And to loop it back to my dad's timing, we ended up leaving the Naval Academy right about the same time because, a year and a half in is when, we found out we were going to have Christian, our oldest son, and that we had to grow up and make some hard choices. And so we, that's a whole story we could get into. But ultimately, Danette came home from Auburn. I came home from Naval Academy to where we were just going to do right and get through all this together and grow up together and raise a kid and start a family together and figure out school, figure out money. But we were going to do it together. That's the principle we fell back on.
Yeah.
And so we came home in 92, got married, and then I rejoined the Navy 2 years later in 94.
So she was with you up there?
Well, she was in Auburn.
Oh, okay.
So we were, we had dated through high school.
Right.
And then I went to Annapolis, she went to Auburn, and we were just dating through college, and things happened, and then we had to decide what we're doing, and we both left our schools and came home and started a life together.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked how we don't need to dwell on that now. We can come back to it, but I do like how I listened to the or watched the I don't know, the town hall or whatever you just had with the other candidates running for Senate, and they were asking about should abortion be banned nationwide, and your response was like, hey, I am pro-life, but let me tell you also, I had to make a tough decision. Yeah. When I was in Annapolis, and going to the Naval Academy's a dream, right? It's a difficult thing, and you could easily see how someone would say, you know what? No, let's abort the baby because I need to do this thing or whatever. Yeah. And you said, you know what? Got to accept the consequences of the decisions that the actions you made. Yep. And ultimately you look back and you've had a good career, and you did the right thing. No, and that son now has our two grandchildren, and so we could talk that we could talk all day about that, and I love to, because it's such a, to me, you don't have time in all these forums to get into really, but one of the things I like to when I have time to talk about is we polarize this whole issue so much instead of focusing on, anytime there's a young lady that's in crisis, how do we help them through that crisis? Because if you can get them to the other side, they never regret it. That child is beautiful. They grow up, they do amazing things. And so we spend so much time talking about whether you want to nationally ban it, you want to make it illegal, criminalize it, instead of just saying, let's all together realize that these are people in hard situations. Let's figure out how to get them through that. And, because the other side is beautiful when you have that child and you raise them. And now I have a 33-year-old son that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't decided that. So did you always want to go into nuclear power and submarines and stuff, like going into the Naval Academy, or? It was an option. 18-year-olds, you want to fly planes, you want to do fast things. So when I went to the Naval Academy, I really was thinking pilot and then maybe submarines to the backup, because I knew it was very technical. I love technical STEM stuff. So that was what I thought there. When I left the Naval Academy and came back in, talked to the recruiter, the decision I had to make was, do I want to go submarines, nuclear submarine program, or do I want to go doctor? And so, because I could have done both, and I really would have loved to have been a doctor. I mean, that's a whole service in and of itself. But I was going to have to ask my wife. We had just
fought her way through finishing college, living on nothing. And I was going to have to ask her if I went to med school, you're only going to get like a $700 a month stipend for another 4 years. And then you're going to have to do your, residencies and all that stuff. And so she was looking at another half a decade before she had any money. And I was like, I can't ask her to do that. And so the easy option, which I still loved, is I went interviewed with Admiral DeMars with the nuclear program and went that way. And
Gotcha.
that way it wasn't much money. I was still taking a big pay cut because I was a chemical engineer here at UEH. So I could have, at that point, new engineers, chemies were making like 40-something thousand a year. And instead I, asked my wife just go with me into the Navy, and she followed me, and because we were only making at that point like $27,000 a year as a young ensign, and so it wasn't much, a couple of grand a month.
So you graduate from UAH and then just enlisted.
I enlisted for the period that you go to officer candidate school,
right.
But you quickly get your commission, and so I was February 10th, 1995. I was commissioned as a U.S. naval officer in the submarine force and started my training.
Gotcha.
And it's funny, I got a good picture there with my son that I left the Naval Academy with in his little SDBs as a 2-year-old. When I'm, taking my pictures, raising my right hand, he's sitting there in a little miniature uniform. And so it was great. And then fast forward, he finished his Navy time. He did 8 years in the Navy. He was teaching at the Naval Academy. So it was even a more full circle moment that he did his 5 years serving on a destroyer, then went and taught midshipmen at the Naval Academy. And so all my Naval Academy buddies loved that, the reason I left ended up teaching at the Naval Academy at the end of his Navy time.
What was he teaching?
He was teaching like navigation, seamanship, naval leadership, leadership principles. He also oversaw their whole little small boat fleet, from a maintenance and operations perspective. Did sailing, taught sailing. So he was just having fun. And he played a lot of golf.
Oh yeah,
he's a good golfer.
Is he?
Yeah,
Christian. That's
Christian.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's a really good golfer.
So then I'm also going to go through the other places you live, so I don't forget, because you had quite extensive.
There's a lot of them.
We did Orlando.
We did 16 moves in 29 years. So.
Charleston.
Yep.
Is it Groton, Connecticut?
Groton,
Connecticut.
Just think Groton, but it's Groton, Connecticut.
San Diego.
Yep.
Millington, Tennessee.
Yep.
Back to Groton. Kings Bay, Georgia.
Yep.
Bremerton, Washington. Freiburg, Germany. Or Freiburg, my glasses on.
Freiburg.
Back to Groton again, then to Norfolk,
Yep.
Newport, Rhode Island, Fernandina Beach, Florida, Washington, D.C., and Huntsville.
Right.
Where were you in D.C., Maryland or Virginia?
We lived in D.C.
Did you really?
Yeah. I lived on the Washington Navy Yard, if you're familiar with where that is, the southeast portion of D.C., right on the Anacostia. We lived in government quarters right there on the Navy Yard. So... like one of the fun stories there, Aaron, because I think I told Thad, he was known as the mayor of the Navy Yard because everybody just knew him. He was there for 4 years. And so he used to love keeping the chief naval operations, little doggy was one of his best friends.
Were you there when there was the shooting there?
No, that was back about a decade before I was there.
Before you there?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
But I have friends that were there when it happened. So.
Yeah.
And there's still, to this day, there's scars on that Navy Yard. There's still people that struggle with that event because it was just so sudden, so deadly.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I was a contractor at CIA, and we were like, that event essentially said, all right, we need to start doing more psychological evaluations of our workforce. And so we were deemed like high risk role just because of what we were doing. We're the Insider Threat Program. We have access to all this data. And we had to start taking like a medical, a psychological screening, you know, and you sit there and they have like 388 questions, and it's kind of designed to like perturb you and, kind of see if someone's just going to snap, because it's like, what is this question? And they kind of ask you the same question, kind of reworded, and then the same question, double negative, reworded. And you're like, but
they just trying to mess with you.
An adaptation, I guess, of what you do when you're over in the war zone and stuff. So that incident really kind of ratcheted up screening, suitability reviews and things like that.
Yeah. One of my had many functions when I was the deputy director of strategic systems programs there, the Naval Nuclear Weapons Program. But that was one of the things I dealt with was, looking at our insider threat program.
Yeah.
Because it is, and sometimes it's really just good people that have scars in their background, and it's how we actually had one we dealt with. It was called away as an active shooter incident and shut the whole Navy Yard down for hours. And so I was kind of like having to see to that one inside the building with doors closed everywhere, trying to sort out the confusion, because it ended up being some miscommunication. There was a person that was struggling, but there was no active shooting going on. So but once that word gets out, everyone is just freaking out, and rightly so, just scared. And so, when you're dealing with such a big workforce, that's a huge enterprise overseeing that whole part of our Navy. You're just going to have some people that that struggle, and so you have to have mechanisms in place ready to respond.
Right. So let's kind of transition now into submarines.
Yeah,
I think you kind of had touched on it earlier. Like, hey, you could have been a doctor, you could have gone to this route. With submarines, I think I've always underestimated the capacity, if you will, or the potential of a submarine, or how important it is to our fleet, right, and our operational posture, I guess. But you've never regretted it, right?
Never.
Okay.
I would do it all over again.
Okay. If you could, let's do a little bit of a 101 just on nuclear power.
Yeah.
Because there was something you stated, I don't remember if it was when you were talking with that or something else, where like one core could power a submarine for 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? It's just hard to like fathom when they're so used to like fuel being consumed, on some periodic basis. And you're like, because one of the questions I would naturally, as an amateur, ask you, like, well, how often do they refuel?
Yeah.
And how do they go about doing that? Well, it never has to refuel over 40 years. Like it just kind of self-generates. Can you just talk a little bit first about, like, for the layman's terms of nuclear, nuclear power and kind of how it works? Yeah.
No, I love talking this stuff.
Please
you don't get to do technical stuff very often. And I'll start with going back to your point about underestimating the role submarines play, and then we can jump into nuclear power. You're not the only one. That's why I love talking about it so much, because people don't understand, because it's a silent service. We're just off the grid. They don't understand what we're doing. They don't know what we're doing. They don't know the scale of the force. They don't know the missions we do. And they never will, because they're just so highly classified. It's just, you just don't talk about it. And we some things get declassified. Some things, the things that we do, never get declassified. So it's just one of those long standing things, because of the nature of what you're doing. So, but, Admiral Richard, he talked about, he was the commander of Stratcom. And actually he's from right here in Decatur.
Really?
I love to tell everybody that, back in, I think it's the 2017-18 timeframe, North Alabama had the commander of U.S. Strategic Command, who went to Grissom High School. He was a 4-star Air Force General Hyten. And the deputy commander went to Decatur High School, and he was the 3-star deputy commander. So the two highest ranking people that would execute the entire nuclear war plan were right here in North Alabama. So people should be very proud of what this region produces, because they're I know both of them. They're incredible men, just incredible leaders. But one of the things that he talked about is how all the war plans that we have are fundamentally, the only way they work is that the fundamental assumption is that strategic deterrence will hold, and strategic deterrence is tied directly to the submarine force, because our submarine launched ballistic missiles that go on the Ohio class, soon to be the Columbia class out there. Mm-hmm. So just from that one aspect, we talked with that about the strategic side and then the attack submarine side. All of our war plans are completely dependent on that deterrent holding, to where we don't go to the nuclear level. Because once you go nuclear in war, all bets are off. Millions of people are dying, and the world is changing as we know it. So back to your point, submarining, people don't know, but we could talk about it all day. So let's talk nuclear energy. So a submarine will have one nuclear reactor. Like the aircraft carriers will have 2 nuclear reactors on them. But the way the system works, just as at a 101 level, you have a core that has fuel, what's called, fuel, uranium, think uranium, and then it has poisons in it. And those are poisons, are not poisons that kind of hurt, like you think of poisons, but they're neutron poisons. So you're trying to develop a core that burns, and this is where our technology has gotten so good over the decades, because used to we had to refuel our cores about every year and a half at the start. So it's a very quick turnover, and that just kept growing as we learned how to design our fuel cells and load the fuel and the poisons properly to where the burnout across the core was very uniform. And that's what allowed us to really extend the life out over time. So we've gotten really good at that. But just think of, you got to have a core. It's called the primary core, and it has water flowing through a primary system. So it's a two-system sort of thing, a primary and a secondary system. The primary system, think of it as you're taking heat that's being generated by fission in the reactor, heating up your water. This is highly pressurized water. Mm-hmm. And then that water is going to go through a steam generator, and there's going to be a heat exchanger interface in that steam generator that connects you to the secondary system, which is non-nuclear. It is just, think of it as a steam cycle. Mm-hmm. So you have this one cycle that's generating hot water going through a steam generator, colder water is going back to the core, and that's just kind of flowing like that, constant flow, taking heat out of the reactor, going to the steam generator. That steam generator is taking the heat out of the primary coolant. It's flashing off your water, that's the condensate feed water that's coming in, making it now steamed, gives you pressurized steam that drives your turbines. So that then goes through a whole cycle. It turns your, in the most submarines, it's actually changing if you want to get into it. It drives the big turbines that run reduction gears, that run the shaft that turns the propeller, and that's what makes the ship go through the water, and it gives you your propulsion. But it also turns turbines. They're called ship service turbine generators that create the electricity for the ship, and that's what gives you the lights, powers everything, and then that whole secondary system just keeps going. So you have two systems that are connected to where the primary is staying mainly inside of the reactor compartment. That way, it's safe from the sailors. That's a very controlled compartment, locked down, lots of shielding from the radiation to protect the rest of the ship. And then you have the secondary system, that's where the people are in the engine room, that drives it all. So that's the basics of it, because what you're trying to do use that nuclear power to give you propulsion power, to power you across the globe as you're driving your ship everywhere, and keep the lights on. Gotcha. And power all your systems. So that's what it does for you. And
how big's the core that you drop in there?
Yeah, it's big. So yeah, and it depends on which class you're talking. The Ohio class, Columbia class, it's obviously huge. So it'd be bigger. It wouldn't fit in this room. Put it that way. So I would take your studio here and go up and down, like at least up one more floor, and at least the circumference of this. So it's pretty big.
Okay,
it's pretty cool to look at, though. When as the engineer officer on the Kentucky, I did all the major inspections in the reactor compartment, because only certain people can go in the reactor compartment, and it's fascinating just to see the power that's right there that you're standing over and looking at, and seeing the control rods that control it, and make sure you have the control of the reactor to bring it critical and to shut it down when you want to shut it down.
Yeah, and these I think you said these subs, you operate 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the one thing that you kind of your claim to fame, if you will, and I think this carries over into your hopes in being a senator, is not giving up on something that is the right thing to do when it came to the shifts, if you will, the
watch rotation. Yeah.
Because it used to be you never it would advance an hour every day. It was 6 hours. So that we were on an 18-hour day instead of a normal 24-hour day, and so your body clock was changing by 6 hours every day, because the time you slept changed every day, which was horrible for your body. And it's one of those things where you go up against those who've been in the Navy for years and years, and it's like, suck it up, boy. That's just the way we do it. And but isn't there a better way to do this, right? So that we don't burn people out or make mistakes, right? Because that has an effect on someone individually, right? Their health.
Yeah, and it absolutely has an impact on their health. So just think of the health, from an ethical point of view, that's one perspective. But then the other part is the standards we hold these young sailors to is so high. And so there is no acceptable, you can't just like doze off and fall asleep on watch, because you're operating reactors. And so you hold them to those standards, yet we were creating an environment to where between your sleep cycle and the training cycle, running drills, we were putting these young sailors in a condition where their body is going to shut down on them and go to sleep at some point. Yeah. And so that to me is why I kept fighting it so much, because to me it was an ethical thing that, even though we had done it for decades, we knew it was wrong. And so at some point you have to come to, if you're an honest organization, and I give the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program as a very honest, transparent, high standards, integrity organization. But this was one of those where we're just getting it wrong. And so even the greatest organizations can get it wrong. And usually those are even the hardest ones to change because they have such a pride that they do things right. They can't imagine that they've done things wrong for decades. But I give the leadership that finally listened so much credit that they said, no, we have to do this right now. And they admitted that there was a better way, and they changed it.
Yeah, and that's I think that happened right when you became an 05.
05 commanding officer.
And so I'm certainly there's some risk. You're probably thinking, well, this could affect my career.
Oh, I knew it could.
I knew absolutely it could, right? And you probably have some people saying, let it go, Seth. Just drop it. Yeah. Versus
I was being told I was pissing people off, just don't, the right idea, wrong time. And I was like, okay, if it's the right idea, wrong time, when is it ever going to be the right time?
Yeah.
We're doing this year after year. We're having tier 1 events year after year. I mean, people don't realize because they don't pay attention, but if you go back before all that, it was very routine, coming out of the Cold War through the 90s, the 2000s, it was routine to have a collision or a grounding annually in the submarine force. And those are big tier 1 events, big deal. Came close to losing a couple of those submarines in some of those events. And fatigue was always tied to it.
Sure.
And that doesn't even count all the other near misses where fatigue was tied to it. And we just got lucky, the whole Swiss cheese model didn't line up and the really bad thing didn't happen. And so, but then once we changed that and to where we had more rested watch standards, and we did some other changes in the force too. So I don't want to just say it was just one thing, but that was a huge component. I don't think anyone could ever deny that rested watch standards operated the ship more safely. So all those incidents, we have had, you go from 1 or 2 a year for decades to very infrequent. So I can only think of, just in the past 15 years, I can only think of maybe 3 or 4 significant events in that period of time, past 10 years.
Yeah.
Since, because we made the official change. We started changing in 2012 and made the official policy change in 2015. So it's been right at 11 years now, with a few years of transition leading into it.
Yeah. I think you talked about, again, how does this relate to being a senator? Well, you got to lobby for things, right? And you had to lobby a 2-star and a 3-star.
Ultimately a 4-star too.
And a 4-star to garner their support and to push it forward, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do.
Yeah. And you have to, and this is where, I don't fault my friends that I was serving with at the time at all, because they were great guys. They just want to lead. They just want to succeed. They just wanted to be ready to go to war if we were called on it. And so, they weren't necessarily wanting to jump into the fray with me to try to fight the fight together. But, that's where I just personally fall back on, John Adams' principle. That's like stand on principle, even if you stand alone, because I believe so much in it. And I was just willing to, I've never done anything worried about what the outcome for me is. I never worry about that. It's all about what is best for in that case, my sailors, the submarine force, the Navy, our nation, because our entire national reputation can be ruined with one wrong event of a nuclear-powered vessel.
Oh, sure.
And that would impact our whole strategy of national security.
Yeah. So why are submarines so difficult to detect? I mean, I'm sure there's some stealth part that we do, right? But I guess it's just the depth of water and stuff. But it's amazing to me. And again, I know I don't want to venture into anything that's classified, and
I won't.
But it's interesting when you hear someone say, "Well, they didn't even know we were there. They don't even know we are there in their waters." Like, how is that even possible? Because fascinates me.
Yeah, it's just, think of it as just, it's cross domains. When you're in the underwater domain, everything is just more opaque. Sound is more opaque.
Yeah.
Sight is obviously gone. So you just can hide. Energy doesn't transmit the way a radar does above water. You got sonar below water, but it's very dependent upon sound velocity profiles and how the sound bends and transmits in the water. So
in depth.
Yeah. And salinity and just there's just so many. It's just hard. Once you go underwater, you can disappear.
Yeah.
And so you take it's already a hard environment to find anything. Just imagine, you're dropping something even in shallow water at the beach. It's hard to find it, right?
Oh, it's gone.
Yeah. And so you imagine a big ocean and you're just a little submarine out there. And then you take American technology and amplify that already challenging environment with incredible stealth technology that we have for our submarines.
Yeah.
And you can just literally disappear. And so underwater, if you're not at the air-water interface, I would be confident, and I have been, I've operated them all over the world. I was confident that nobody was going to find me. But I could find them because my technology was good enough to find them. And we can get into that a little bit. But then you get to the air-water interface, and the biggest concern you have is, once you stick a pole out of the water,
sure,
now there's something that a radar could detect. And so there's very highly capable radars that are on, our adversaries' aircraft, and even land radars that can pick you up if you're, close to land. So there is a concern there, and so that's why you want to minimize. You only want to be at that, what we call it, periscope depth. You only want to be there if the mission dictates it, because you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so we, from the visual radar sort of counter detection concerns, I won't get into the things we do to prevent that detection, but we have techniques, we have procedures that we do to stay covert. We'll just say it that way. And then from a communications perspective, that's the other big, if I was sitting here and I transmitted something right now to a satellite and the Chinese wanted to locate whereof, there's ways for them to triangulate me and figure out where I am. So when you're a submarine out there, you're very particular on when you transmit, just so you can't get detected and located. So, but back to your just original question, it's one of those just areas of the way God created everything. It's easy to hide in it. And so that's why the submarine force is so critical to deterring China, because that's where we still have the big advantage. We could get into, what the China challenge looks like with it. But, the thing that is keeping them from moving, one of the key things is our asymmetric advantage in the undersea domain. We're just so much better. They're getting numbers, but I can find them, they can't find me. I can find the Russians, they can't find me. So it's one of those things.
So there's attack subs. You do some reconnaissance. Can you talk a little bit about the triad and where a submarine fits into, I guess, as part of the ballistic missile defense and all that? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's not so much the ballistic missile defense. That gets into the MDA stuff. But yeah, the triad, the nuclear triad think of it as the Air Force owns 2 legs and the Navy owns 1 leg. So I was the deputy director of the Navy leg, where we oversaw the whole enterprise that managed all the land support, and then the launcher systems, the weapons control systems, the fire control systems, everything that's required to launch a Trident II D5 missile into the air, and then carry those nuclear warheads on the end of it, and eventually transit through the atmosphere into outer space and deploy those reentry bodies. So that is the Navy's portion of the nuclear triad. We call it sea-based strategic deterrence is the term we use. So the Navy has that leg, and it's all submarines. So you have the Ohio class. We have 14 submarines right now that do that mission. Okay. And those are going to start getting replaced one for one with the Columbia class when the first ship, the USS District of Columbia, comes online here in a couple of years. And then you have the Air Force legs, which is the intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs is what they call them, and then the bomber leg. So that's the other 2 legs of it to make the triad. You put those 3 together, they each have their own advantages, disadvantages, and that's why when they all work together to form a triad, it gives you all the different things you want to execute strategic deterrence.
Okay. What the naming conventions, and obviously they're all states and now the District of Columbia, but like how is that determined? Or because like there's what, Maryland, Ohio.
Yeah, it started evolving, getting more confusing over time. It used to be very clear. Submarines for the longest were named for fish.
Okay.
And so if you look at the earlier classes of our submarines, they were named after different fish because we call it, we earn fish. Our submarine warfare pin is a dolphin fish. So that's the way it was. But when they were looking at starting the Los Angeles class back in the 70s to replace the older attack submarines, one of the things to get support in the congressional world, to get the money for a new class of submarines, Admiral Rickover came up with the idea. It's like, okay, fish don't vote, but
states do.
States and cities and Congress districts do, and so that's where they started naming Los Angeles, and that whole class was named, with a few exceptions. There was like a Hyman Rickover that there's a few people that get a submarine named after them, but that class was primarily named after cities.
Okay.
And then so think of them as the attack ones were the city class, Los Angeles. Then the strategic submarines, the SSBNs, of which there were originally 18 Ohio class. And then 4 of them got converted into the guided missile submarines that I had command of, one of those, Florida. They took state names because they were, except for HMJ, Henry M. Jackson was named after a senator. But they took state names because they were the bigger, think of it, more capital ships. They were bigger, more influential, more firepower. So they got a state name, and the smaller ones got a city name. And that's why we kind of stayed until the Virginia class came along. Then it got all combobulated because the attack subs used to be named after cities, but then they started naming after states. So then you had some attack subs named states, some ballistic missile submarines named states, and because there was going to be fewer submarines, so they were just like, let's make them state names instead of trying to find a bunch of cities. And so that's where we find ourselves now, as the Virginia class has a bunch of state names, like you got North Carolina, you got Virginia, Texas. So that's the Virginia class, and then they're going to start naming the Columbia class. The first one is technically District of Columbia, but the class name is going to be Columbia class, and then they'll just start naming them. Secretary of the Navy is ultimately the one that gets to decide what the name is and what naming convention they're going to use, and so that's his authority.
Cool. Let's kind of transition to the Senate, but here's what's, I think, kind of playing back what we started with is, kind of who is Seth Burton? Well, it's not, there's, like I said, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. She's never worked outside the home, single income. But what I didn't do in comparison to you is be gone 70 to 100 days at a time or months at a time on deployment after deployment, right? Assignment after assignment, floating in the depths of water somewhere, right? And then, she's raising kids and stuff, and the commitment, again, to family and to making that happen, and over 30 years, right? That's a long time.
It is.
And so for me, I usually don't, this isn't a political show, but I am going to start probably sharing my opinion more. And I've been doing this a while, and I've been here longer, just on the way I see things.
Right.
And, I was watching I don't know if you called it a town hall. Was that I think that's the one on YouTube.
Which one?
There's the one where you guys spun the wheel.
Oh, that was, they called it a candidate forum down in Hoover.
A candidate forum.
Yeah. And
so, I'm not going to call out anybody's names.
Yeah.
Because I'm just not, and I try to be really fair.
I don't call their names out because I trust the voters.
Yeah. And I'm one of those people, unless I really have like facts,
concrete. Yeah.
And a lot of people don't, and this isn't a show about getting all these clicks and stuff, right? Like if I'm going to share an opinion on something, I feel like I have a valid reason to share my opinion. Yeah. And of course people, still won't like your opinion, but, and again, that just comes from life. So I look at people like you, because I have a chip on my shoulder to a certain degree, and I don't know if you do.
Oh, definitely.
But there's it's a chip on our shoulder. Like, why hasn't a senator been from North Alabama for how long has it been?
He left office in 1979, so he was elected in 1972. And then his relief was elected in 78 and relieved him in 79. So it's almost 50 years.
Yeah, and
it's unbelievable.
I have moved here, and I'm not like someone like you who's lived here and was essentially born here, right, and raised here.
Yeah.
But you do have to wonder like why. And I've interviewed a couple of people in the past where I don't know if Joey Cece comes to mind, and I've mentioned this a few times on my show where he's like, Huntsville's kind of different. This area is different in allowing the outsider, in a way, or let's say even someone, maybe the Burton name of just, hey, we're going to get behind whoever wants to step up and lead, versus other parts of the state where unless your grandfather was on the Mardi Gras committee or in city council, you have no shot at running for mayor or city council or doing anything in politics, and like not because of it's just kind of the way it is, right? Good old boy network type thing. And so, I'm one of those that I got married young. You got married young, had to pay for everything. I never had any sort of assistance. At one time, I'll tell you, I didn't, and I wasn't going to foreclose on my home. I had a home in Florida that I owned right after the predatory lending, the market crash. And to get the bank's attention, someone said, just stop paying your mortgage until the bank. And all I wanted to do was refinance it. I just wanted to redo the terms and get out from this crazy thing I got in, right? Yep. And I saved the money, and ultimately it took 11 months, but I finally got the bank to like put me into a 30-year fixed and all this kind of stuff. And I repaid them everything. I said, it's not that I'm trying to run from you. Yeah. I just want a normal rate, and I paid them back, right? So I've never taken a handout or anything. Yeah. And so when it comes to politics and things, it's like, I have a little bit of I lean more to the right because I've seen too many people take advantage of government programs and such, right? And I had to work hard
all the time.
And why doesn't this other person have to work hard? And I really am also not one that's ever an extreme end of the spectrum.
Yeah, me either.
The same thing, pro-life, like, hey, look, there are always going to be situations where you should take a hard look at something, right? Yeah. And not just throw the rule at them. Yeah. So I feel like you're in really good shape as far as what I look at for candidates. I've interviewed Jared Hudson before. Yeah. And let me say this too, like, I'm also not like dually impressed just because someone says, and this is where, when I worked at the CIA for a long time and I've interacted with tons of people, the military, like, it doesn't necessarily impress me when someone say, well, I was in the military for 30 years. And
me either.
What did you do? Or for someone to say, well, I'm a businessman. Well, what kind of business? Yeah. Is it an honest business? Because that doesn't really impress me either. Yeah. And it could be anything. And for someone to say, well, the business guy, like it doesn't matter if you don't call it a business. When you're a deputy director of nuclear, what was it?
Naval Nuclear Weapons Program.
Yeah. Like that's a business.
It's multi-billion-dollar budgets every year.
You're constantly fighting for the budget.
Yeah. We're working with Congress, figuring out how to fund things, work with our resource sponsors. So it's a never-ending struggle.
Even if one guy's like, he's a doctor, everyone's in business to some degree. You call it a nonprofit or not, like if you're going to survive in what you're doing and thrive, that is an element of business. Yeah. So there's a lot of that doesn't really impress me. Yeah. So then it's more than that. Like, well, what's impressive? Like, let's look at the individual and what's really motivating them and why are they doing this? And unfortunately, there's way too many congressmen and Senate who have really enriched themselves somehow, some way, right?
Completely.
When they get to Washington and nothing really happens. Yeah. So I guess first let's talk about the campaign trail, and I can bring up your website if you want and talk through that. The thing I really like right away is the mega. Yeah. Make everything great in Alabama.
For Alabama. Yeah.
How did you come up with that?
I was just trying to think, what branding, what type of messaging can you, because I didn't want to just put something out there that meant nothing. Yeah. And so I literally sat around with several of my close friends and family, and we just batted around ideas of, because we didn't want it to be like totally tied to MAGA, because there's some, good and negative connotations to that. Yeah. I like the idea of mega from a, it's something grand. I truly believe Alabama can be one of the lead states of the future in our nation.
I did bring it up here.
Okay, cool.
But
So I like the idea of mega just from us having, because I told my kids growing up, it's okay to have a big dream. Shoot for. I'll give you a Christian. My oldest sons, for example, we're all basketball. We love.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned in the thing the Burton curse. We all love basketball, even though our bodies were designed by God to do other sports. So, but he wanted to play at Duke. He was a Duke fan. And I say, dream, go after that. I was never going to say, you probably won't make it to Duke,
Yeah.
Because you realize those things on your own as you reach different thresholds. But what I told him is like, if you shoot for the stars and land on the moon's still a pretty cool place. And so I encourage every young person to stretch, go hard. So that in the case of Mega, we will never, ever achieve as a state of Alabama the end product that we want. And you shouldn't. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And so we should have something that's so unattainable, but it's a vision that we want to work toward, that everybody is getting better along the way as you keep working over generation and generation. All of a sudden you look back and it's like, how did we become the nation's leader when everybody used to laugh at us for being 49th and always fighting for Arkansas and Mississippi for the bottom rung?
Yeah.
I truly believe this state can be the leader of the future because we have the right people, the right talent, the right work ethic. There's a lot of just hardworking people in Alabama, and what we need to do is get rid of some of the stuff that's holding us back. There is corruption in our state. There is power control, centralized power that we just need to fight and gradually eliminate to where we can achieve the greatness that we really think. And it's not about enriching certain power elites that run Alabama.
I remember I took I failed it. I took AP Government.
Oh yeah.
And I was supposed to read a book over the summer going into my senior year. And that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I was a football player and, we had 2-a-days and we're supposed to lift weights. I wanted to go to the beach and
not reading that book.
Next thing you know, first day of school and it's like.
Did you read the Cliff Notes?
No, yeah. I mean, no. I don't know if they had a Cliff Notes version of whatever.
Yeah, and it was before the internet. We couldn't just AI it back then.
But I don't even remember what the book was. I just remember the thing that I took away in the 7 weeks I was in that class before I dropped it, and then I just took an extra weight training class, right?
Yeah.
Was special interest groups.
Yeah.
And that thing, and how important the lobby is to Washington, right? Or
Yeah.
into politics in general.
And,
right?
and it's so unfortunate. At the Naval War College, I took a course there. It's called National Security Decision Making. But one of the things they taught us is they called it palace politics, it's just very unfortunate that the nature of man and the way power is controlled and accumulated and fought over and protected. That's what we see right now in our government. It's not about solving anything. It's purely about entities trying to control power, which controls money, which controls power. And so it's not doing anything good for our nation. Trust in government has been plummeting over the last 2 generations from 73% in 1960 to less than 20% now. And yet we're not doing anything to change it. And it's our responsibility as the citizens to change it. The representatives aren't going to change it on their own. They have to be held accountable by the people to change it.
A few things. One is, you're probably like me, even though you're running for senator now, and you're probably having to say some of the same things that you've heard other pundits say, but it's a little bit an eye roll at time when someone's like, "Well, I'm going to go and make a change." And it's like, I've heard that.
I know. I hate the word change at this point.
I'm going to make a difference in Washington, and there's one element. This kind of goes back to I actually yesterday released the episode with this guy Sean Wiswesser on he's a CIA, speaks Russian, and was a case officer, if you will, right, and understanding Russian intelligence, that was his whole career,
right.
And so we talked a little bit at some point of how most people, and then you know this because of what you did in submarines, right? It is so classified; it's never going to be declassified, and most people just don't understand why there. Let's say on the good side of the government, from national security and other stuff, there's reasons you will never know why we did something or whatnot, because it's not good to get that out. It exposes our tradecraft and whatever else, right, and harms our ability to maintain national security. And so then candidates will say whatever, and then at some point you get a briefing on Capitol Hill or with the president, whatever the role is, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Right, because you are now exposed to something that you had no idea.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, you're going to probably change your tune a little bit because you weren't briefed in, or you weren't read in, didn't have a need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you make these assumptions, these assertions, and and nowadays you can make that very loud. And they don't know what they're doing, or what's going on with this or that. And you're like, well, you probably will never know.
Yeah.
And
well, that's been playing out a lot just on the campaign trail, because one of the big things you get asked regularly about is the Iran war stuff. And,
right.
And I'm not. I just refuse to give cliche campaign answers or say what I think people are wanting to hear.
Yeah.
And so, because ultimately, to your point, I literally don't know everything that the president knows when he made that decision.
Right.
So I can have my personal opinions based on my knowledge set of whether I would have wanted to go into this preemptive war, which I probably would not want to have done that. But I have no idea what the full picture was. I don't know what he really saw as the risk. So I just learned a long time ago, even though you want me to lay judgment down, I'm for or against this, I get accused of, you're trying to walk the fence. And I'm like, no, I just literally, when I don't have all the information, I can tell you what I would do based on what I know. And that's what I would, in this case of the war, I could say, well, when it started, based on what I know, I probably would not have done what President Trump is doing. But I could be completely wrong, because he might have a whole different set of information that I don't have. Yeah. And so I just saw over the time, 30 years of doing what I do, I mean, things would be happening around the world, and I would be hearing my friends and family talk about it. I would know the real truth behind what's happening, and I could hear them conjecturing and saying stuff, and they criticizing leaders. And it's like, you don't know the whole picture.
Yeah.
And you just have to sit there quietly and let them do it. And it's healthy. I want people questioning stuff. That's healthy discourse is part of our protecting our republic. We need to challenge people, because the other side of that is the cloak and dagger secrecy allows bad things to happen too, because you can cover things up. And so that's why the people you put into power is so important, to have trust that they're going to do the right thing, because there are bad people that go have power and they abuse it. Yeah. And so that's our job, is try to sift through who we really trust. And trust is something we could do a whole podcast on, because it's so fundamental to everything we do.
Let's talk about this, the career politician, and then contrast that with, because I know, you're basically saying, and like hey, I'm not a politician. I have no ties to it. Right. And you're bringing your military career.
I've been apolitical for 3 decades.
But, you're not in this category, but those who are very bombastic, right? And it's like this let's get someone in there that's going to, it feels like they're just for clicks. It's just for publicity. Yeah. They say outlandish things, and it doesn't even really matter. Let's say that they're in a hearing. It's like they don't even really care what your answer is if they're questioning someone. They just want to make you look stupid. They want the soundbite, right? And there we have a whole. There appears to be a faction of those that, okay, you're not a career politician, but you're not helping anything either, right? Because what we should have some decorum and some respect,
absolutely,
right? And not have like this extension of society. We're already killing each other online with our comments, and now like it's just bled over into our public, our debates. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, like we have devolved.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that, back to standing on principle that we talked about earlier, is like, if which I don't think the voters of Alabama want this, but let's just say some voting population wants a bombastic, just going to go up there and talk big and show up on different news channels and just share a lot. Need to stop for anything?
I may have to text someone in a second.
Okay.
Let's go ahead. Go ahead.
So if that's what the population wants, which I do not, I'm not saying Alabama wants that, because I truly believe Alabama wants someone that's a deliberate, a thinker, has the experience to do it. But if they want a bombastic guy, I'm not the guy. I will never do it. I'm not going to play games. I'm not going to go run into, CNN, Fox News to share my position on everything. To me, my job as a senator would be whatever I'm faced with at that time, whether it's budgets or policy stuff, is to be as smart as I can be on that issue, hear from my constituents as much as I can, and I'll never make them all happy, but I need to have that body of voice that's coming to me, and then I'm going to make the best decision that I can, and it's going to be very deliberate. It will be very, non-flashy. I'm not a flashy guy. I'm a very kind of boring guy. I'm very, very just, I do my job and I do my duty. I'm not going to, that's just me. And so people need to understand that about me, because if I'm elected the senator, they're not going to get a guy, that goes and showboats. I will not do that.
What about how are you getting along with the other candidates?
Yeah.
And is there some mudslinging and some?
That's a great question.
And is that uncomfortable for you if it's like, oh, wait a minute, we're going to play this game now?
Yeah. Okay. It's a great question. And, I'll tell you the quick hit, because it's a short history, so we can talk about it pretty much all, because I just joined the race in January. They had been going, all of them except Dr. Dees had been in the race since last summer. So they've been doing their thing, and generally the whole campaign to date has been very much, everybody talking about themselves, not a lot of mudslinging, and pretty, good decorum. There's a lot of chatter around people and their histories now, that's out there, but I didn't see any of the candidates really going at each other. When I entered, I wrote, because I'm a deliberate guy. I'm all about leaders communicating, even when they disagree. In my case, I'm challenging another 5 guys to the same seat. So I wrote them all a personal letter, sent it to them, and just introducing myself, why I'm doing it. Not that I'm questioning them at all, but I believe in voters having choices. I had a unique set of experiences that I think addresses the next decade of what this nation is going to face that none of them had, at least to the level that I have. And so I just tried to articulate in a professional manner, and it was interesting. That's the first kind of indicator of the people that you're dealing with, and just how they prioritize things and how they think through things. Because I got immediate response from one candidate. I'm not going to use names. I got immediate response from one candidate.
Emails?
No,
letters.
I got a voice call
okay.
Immediately from. I sent the letters via email just to try to get to them. I got immediate same day from one candidate. He and I talk regularly. He connected me to the other candidate to make sure he knew that I had written him a letter. Talked to them, and then I independently, Dr. Dees actually didn't send a letter to, because he wasn't in yet. And, we both kind of came in at the same time, but we connected right away. So, but I got on essentially a direct link with 2 of the 4 candidates that were in it. The other 2 I never heard anything from. And so that to me was the first indicator, okay, if they or their staffs even don't think it's important enough to establish leader-to-leader dialogue, when you're about to run a campaign, with and against each other and for the seat, that was my first indicator of, okay, where they place their priorities. Because to me, everyone deserves the respect of just, okay, let's do something good for our state. And so that was the first data point. That's just, I put that out there. It's interesting because I read things like that into, how people think and how they prioritize and how they value people. And then fast forward, I've met them all in various engagements now. So I'm all of them I communicate with now. That was just the phase the first month or so. And all of them have been very professional to me. I think they all, just to be honest with you, I think at least the top 3 just think, well, he's not a problem. He's brand new. He hasn't run a campaign. He's not scaled to be able to do this. So I think, they're not worried about me. And so there's nobody's throwing mud at me. They're not targeting me. And I've been told if all of a sudden become relevant, then they'll come after me. So, but I don't know. I hope these guys are above that, and we just really have good dialogue till May 19th, and we let voters pick.
What do you think that they would try to isolate about you to try to delegitimize you?
Yeah, I really think they have a lot of respect and gratitude for what I'm bringing to the race, because I am when it comes to just the experience I have for dealing with national security, accountability. None of them have been held to the level standard of accountability that I've been held to. and then my understanding of nuclear energy and how that's critical to the future. I think they value that whole skill set and experience and just knowledge base that I have. And, I'm passionate about I'm passionate about the nation. And so I think they know if I have, and I've heard they know I'd be a very, very credible threat to their winning the election if I all of a sudden took off. And because the package is right. It's just a matter of whether you can scale in time, because it's hard to do that in 3.5 months. And I think since I'm not backed, the top three are really backed by particular power wings and money of the Republican Party. I have none of that backing. I didn't ask for it. I didn't go looking for it. I made a decision to enter based on a small circle of friends, prayer, and what God was moving in my spirit. And that's what I decided. I didn't go asking for blessings and can I join the race? Because to me, that's anti-Republican, that's anti-American. We should not ask permission to do things like this. We should say, citizens, you have a choice. And that's what I chose to do. So I think since I'm not in that power mix, it's been so hard to get, TV interviews. People just, they leave our campaign out of newspaper reports. They'll say there's 5 candidates running and they just leave me out. They don't do surveys. They don't include us in those surveys. So you can just tell they're just hoping the clock runs out and I don't ever become relevant in this, just because I'm, small campaign starting off and then no political experience and that sort of thing. Just a lot of experience to bring to, I tell everybody when I'm kidding about it, it's like, I think I'm the most ready to do the job of U.S. Senator. Unfortunately, I'm probably the least electable based on the time that we have to accomplish this. And so, but I also believe that there's a God that can do mighty things, and people, when they hear and if they believe and enough people actually take action on it and support and vote for me, I think I have a chance, because the whole goal is getting a runoff. I mean, there's no way I'm going to win 25, 26% of the vote when everybody else is barely getting to 20, 22%. So the goal is to be in the top 2. And my goal is that enough, especially around, I want North Alabama to really resonate, that you have a chance that to put your vote down for someone that is as high tech as you're going to get in a senator. He's had the most experience with the war fighting capability of the nation that a senator could ever have. I'm hoping North Alabama will rally around that and try to give themselves a chance to have a voice in the U.S. Senate that's other than what South Alabama has given them as options for 5 decades.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to just finishing that thought, because one of the things that, other than North Alabama, because this is a big deal to me, because it's not just the senator, this to show you how we are kind of shaped by Birmingham and South in the state, because they get somehow the power base over time evolved to where they control the politics in Alabama. And that's just, it's so broken when we're so important to the state up here in North Alabama, that I'm not saying we should be, because I don't believe in any region having all the power all the time. I like it moving around, but we are 0 for 31. There's 31 statewide offices, and we're 0 for 31 in those since the 70s in Madison County. And so one of the most important counties in the state just can't get a statewide elected official elected out of here. And so somehow we have to crack that code and break it, because that's not healthy for the whole state if only certain regions have power. Because if you look at it, if the congressman gets elected, Little Enterprise, so Huntsville can't get a senator for 50 years, but Enterprise, which is a great little town, but why would it have 2 sitting senators when Huntsville can't get one for 5 decades?
Is it just because this is kind of the concept of our town, right? And this is where, I don't know if you've heard me say this, like, you can have the Olympics and all the Americans are behind the U.S. in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. But as soon as we start bringing it back home and it's East and West or North and South or this state versus that state, this team versus that team, right? And then you show your true color. You draw your new boundary around that. Yeah. So here you have North and South. Huntsville maybe arguably has developed later than those other cities, right, in Alabama. Right now it's the largest, but Birmingham was. So now it's just like this pissing match and this competition towards one another, because of, even though we're all the same state, there's enough of jokes that go on up here about Huntsville being very different than the rest of Alabama,
Yeah.
right? And they obviously probably hear that, and
Yeah.
they don't like that.
Yeah.
And they take exception to it. But I don't know. I haven't lived here long enough to know. But certainly, you got Mobile, you got Birmingham, you got Montgomery, Huntsville, right? Kind of the four biggest areas. And something's has gone on where we just operate differently here. And, some of it's I think there's a lot of transplants up here because of people like me who've come here for jobs and stuff. And I don't know, maybe is it just because we just look that much different than the rest of the state as far as the industries and stuff that we're in?
Yeah, I think the industries that we're in definitely drive a lot of I mean, I've talked to a lot of fellow citizens from southern Alabama during the trail here, and what they'll say is we want some of your goodness brought south, because they see that the success of North Alabama and the growth, the economic growth, the safety, it's a very safe place to raise your families. And so they see the goodness up there and they want some of it. They've told me they want some of that brought south. So how do you do that? But my whole point back to yours is I'm just a true believer that I don't want the who we're electing to, we'll say governor or U.S. senator. I don't want a few power elites shaping who the candidates are, and telling you who you should vote for because they've raised $10 million. When I got in this when I was looking to get in the race, just asking some people that were in the Republican Party just to understand the process and all that stuff. I was told straight up, to win this race, you need to be able to raise at least $5 million, and you'll probably end up spending closer to $7 to $10 million. And I said that's just such an indictment on our system that it doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter what you can offer the American people and the citizens of Alabama. If you can't raise $5 million, you're not considered a viable candidate.
Yeah.
And that's it's so broken. So I've actually started telling people when they're looking at candidates in any race, not just mine, the first thing you should do is study the candidates that the power establishment is ignoring. You should, if there's 6 people in there and there's 3, in our case, there's 3 that are getting big money, the first thing you should do is look at the bottom 3 and say, okay, what do they have that might represent me and be more loyal to me as a citizen than who's being bought off and paid for by big money that they're going to owe something for all that money that's going to them? Who's going to be more loyal to you as a private just citizen that just has a concern as a citizen? Who's going to listen to you more? A guy like me that has been giving no money by anyone that has special interest power. I've only gotten money from people that just believe in me, or the person that's taken 10,000, 5,000, 7,000 from all these different people that have power, and they're going to expect something paid back for their market sectors, their political interest, their businesses, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So is the citizen going to get listened to by that person as much as the person that gave them $10,000? Unfortunately, they won't, because every time you give big money like that, there's strings attached to it. And so I just want, if we're gonna be the sovereign citizens that our republic was meant to be, we have to think differently, and we have to refuse to be told who the successful candidates are. You should actually go proactively look at the ones that the press is telling you it just isn't viable.
Yeah. Have you had thoughts of what it would be like if you win and you're in Washington and oh my gosh?
I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't think ahead too much. I'm very confident on, one of the things that some of my counterparts talk as a big plus for them is, they either already live there, they're already in the system, they know the system, they'd be ready to go day one. They say all these things, which to me, I don't understand why you're kind of touting that as one of the positives for you. Because I've run huge organizations. I've changed my job by definition for 30 years has changed every 2 to 3 years. And so the adaptability you learn when you do those type of new jobs every 3 years, I have zero concern. Now, the part that I won't like about being a senator is all the stuff that comes with, just the negative side of politics, of people trying to coerce you, trying to co-opt you. And so I'm sure I'm going to have to really learn how to, manage going from a high trust environment that I'm used to a low trust environment, which is politics. And so I will have to, that's something where I'll have to put the right people around me and make sure that helps with that transition. But from standing up a team, going to work for the Citizens of Alabama, I know how to organize teams. I know how to get that. So, and I guess to answer your question, I don't think about it much because I think about what I have to do to earn the trust of the citizens to even be considered for that. And then the other part's easy compared to getting elected. Like I said earlier, I'm ready to be a U.S. Senator. I just might not be ready to be elected because I just retired from the Navy. I just served apolitically for 30 years, and now I'm trying to do one of the most political things that you can do.
Who's on your campaign team? Do you have a campaign manager?
I have a chief of staff.
Okay.
So I chose not to go the route of hiring a political. I had a consultant that was kind of giving me some advice, but I didn't. I wanted to be. I knew it was going to be about a 3.5-4 month sprint, and so I did not want it to be high overhead, cost a lot. I wanted every dime that came in to the campaign to go to something that communicated to the voter, not went into somebody's pockets to be a paid consultant, paid campaign and manager, whatever. So I chose to do that. So I'm doing a lot on my own. Have a chief of staff that helps me manage calendars. We built the website together. So. And then we have a small team of volunteers to help calling, taking signs and stuff like that. But it's very much just a small group of volunteers that we do a lot of stuff that's unnatural. And
they're traveling all over the state with you?
Some of them. My main teammates that travel with me all the time are Danette and Aaron. They like last week, the whole time we were down in South Alabama, it was the three of us, the three amigos, just engaging with everybody we could engage with down there. And so that's the main, and that's the way I like it. I love traveling with my wife and son. And I like since I am very much a volunteer led campaign. I don't have paid people. They're in their own jobs. They're doing stuff and they're helping when they can. So I don't want to be disruptive to that. I just appreciate any help that I can get. And then I have people that are spread around the state already, that when I go to, say, Birmingham or Southeast Alabama or Mobile, I have people down there that kind of welcome me to the area and kind of help me when I get down there.
What are some of the typical questions or comments you're getting from people around the state as you visit with them? What's on their top of mind for them or their?
Yeah, it depends on which group you're talking to. If you're talking to a veterans group, it's very focused on veterans issues. But I would say across, that's not group specific, so I don't dive into one. I think the main things that are coming up with people are, and it all gets tied to trust in government, but they typically, as would be expected, they're talking about the symptoms of what a real breakdown of trust is causing it. Like they're very frustrated with how do we end the career politician sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That is a theme everywhere we go, and I immediately come back with it's us, it's you, the voter, we, the citizen, that has to stop that. So career politicians are a big thing that they're struggling with. National debt is a big thing they struggle with. Healthcare is questions that even that crosses into the veteran community, of course. And then let's see, infrastructure actually is a pretty big one because as we are growing as a state. I was down in the Port of Mobile and just trying to see how that port is growing. I-10 is struggling to keep up with the growth, and then you get to a place like Huntsville, and we're just not set up to, you compare Birmingham's infrastructure to Huntsville's, and, we're surpassing them in population, but man, they have a lot more infrastructure and better roadways to handle the growth than we do. So I think that's a big one. I would think the final one and it gets into what I was talking about earlier, is the control of power and the abuse of that power really is the utility rates and what's happened in our state to just for utility energy costs to go up so much relative to the rest of the nation, and people are really struggling to pay those bills. And I find it, I'm learning, up until 2 months ago, if you asked me to explain how, utility stuff worked in Alabama and the Public Service Commission, all that stuff, I didn't know. But I've learned a lot about it on this trail and just watching what's been going on in Montgomery. And I think it's an absolute. Now I might be wrong. I might be missing something, but what I do know, kind of like I talked earlier, based on what I know, I think it's a moral travesty of what has happened with Alabama Power not being not having to have a open rate hearing to where the public can understand why they charge what they charge, and that hasn't happened since I was a kid in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And so when you have, regulated monopolies, part of that deal, in a public, a public/citizen relationship, when you give that kind of, lack of competition environment over to an entity like that, the deal is you got to be totally transparent. Because if you don't trust what a regulated monopoly is doing, then, it gets, you're going to be very, very frustrated. And so they have to be transparent to show you if they're charging legitimate rates, they should be able to prove it to you.
Yeah.
Any good organization that is doing what's right should be fully transparent. So that's where I have a big problem with what's happening with them is they aren't being transparent. And they seem to be doing everything that they can do in Montgomery to avoid transparency. So that makes me very suspicious. And I don't understand why our current senators don't call it out more and use their their love for Alabama and their power as U.S. senators to say, why is this happening? So that doesn't make sense to me as just a new guy looking at the system. And that's one of those things, back to your question, that gets asked all the time. What are we going to do about our energy bills in Alabama? Because I tie that to my nuclear energy discussion, of course, for the future.
Well, I was just thinking about how transparency, and I know that across the nation, anytime gas prices go up, people will say, well, wait a minute. The gas station paid whatever for what's in the ground right now. Yeah. And all of a sudden overnight it went up, but yet maybe the new truckload hasn't even come in. It's just kind of like that. Yeah. Maybe we'll never get there. Transparency into the per gallon cost or something, right? That they just kind of charge whatever they want to charge.
And that's a lot more dynamic. But when you get to your electricity bills, like the way they locked the rates in for 4 years, I think it was, if I remember what the final bill had, explain to me how when rates go up a lot in a few years and everybody's calling for them to come down, again, I question, it's like, why do you all of a sudden call for, you're making it sound like it's a good thing because you're guaranteeing the citizens your rates aren't going to go up for 4 years. But the other way to look at it, and where transparency is so important, is, okay, what if you're locking in rates so the rates don't come down to where they should be? So now you're guaranteeing yourself a rate that's above what the market rate should be to maintain your certain margin. And you're guaranteeing that for 4 years instead of coming before the public and explaining why you've set the rates where they are. So that stuff, again, I'm just questioning all that. It doesn't make sense to me. And to me, when everything to me for the survival of our republic is based on us being trustworthy to each other, and having trust in government, trust in elections, trust in regulated utilities. If that breaks down, we have nothing. Yeah. So,
I think you talked about China a little bit, right? And I think, this just also fresh off of when I was interviewing Sean about Russia. Russia, China. These guys play the long game. Yeah. And
particularly China.
Yeah, and
Russia just survives no matter what.
Right. And it's just, I don't know where I'm trying to go with this question or this comment, but hold on, I lost my. This happens. I have a senior moment every now.
That's all right. I do too.
I lost
just,
it.
You were talking about China, Russia, long game.
It's all right. I may have. That's all right. I'll let that go.
Yeah, it'll probably come back in a second.
Yeah, it probably will. I hope. Have you met Senator Britt?
I met her shortly.
Yeah.
And not to call her team out or anything, but it's another one of those. I understand gatekeeping. I've worked. I was the deputy to a 3-star in the Navy, and we maintained a very open, accessible environment for him. So, but I understand the functions of controlling a senior leader's, managing senior leaders' time, because it's a huge time demand. But, again, back to where priorities are. I met her at an event here in Huntsville. Very nice, cordial. She said, "Great, I'd like to do a follow-up with you. Just talk to my team." And of course, I talked to the team and sent them put the request in and all that stuff, and I've just never heard back. So I've met her once, to answer your question, but I think the gatekeepers did their job, but again, to what I talked about earlier, I can't imagine being in a position to where this could be my partner, Senator, in 8 months, 9 months, whenever January gets here, and the team doesn't get the right signal that, okay, I want to have 15, 20 minutes to get to know this person a little bit better. Yeah. Whether they win or not. That's just me, though. Yeah. I don't want to sit in judgment on Senator Britt and her time management, but I would appreciate just meeting with her.
I'm just hopeful. How long do you think it's going to take to kind of can we turn the country around in the sense of our the level of our rhetoric and our discord, and it may start at the top, right? There's things I really like about President Trump, and then there's stuff where I'm like, can we remember what it is to be the office of the president? Yeah, and I know
I'm with you.
I know your favorite president's George Washington, right?
Yeah.
And we seem to long for those that represented the office well, but I just hope we can get past. And it doesn't matter if it's Senator Britt. Somehow I ended up in her Instagram feed.
Really?
But man, the people just go after her. It doesn't matter what it is, really? Right? In the comments. And once you put yourself out there, or you're in an office like that, it's just constant, right?
It is.
You're this and that and blah, and then the other side, I'm sure, Democrats are getting annihilated and assassinated by the Republican commenters. I just long for a day where we can, and also not feel like everything's a conspiracy.
Yeah.
In the government, right? But the more the social media perpetuates things, more people talk about it. You end up just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Did we land on the moon? The more time goes on, the more people talk about it. You just, I don't know. And I want to have faith in the government.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
We all do, right?
We all do.
And it's
unfortunately less than 1 in 5 do right now.
And you want to have faith that either party can present a really good candidate for president, right?
Yeah.
I know what I was saying. And then confidence in elections, because obviously Russia doesn't care if it was Republican or Democrat. They got exactly what they wanted out of this. Make the Americans just rip each other apart and have distrust in our electoral process.
Yeah. Abraham Lincoln told us a long time ago that there's going to be no external, thing that destroys us as a republic and as a nation. If we're to die, it will be by suicide. And so that's what China has done. That's what Russia has done. Everyone that is our competitor in the international space that is against our ideals, they're just doing things to try to make sure we set the conditions for internal destruction. And so we have to guard against that. We have to fight it with all we have. We have to know that it's real. And we have to look at, when you have differences of opinion, you have to elect representatives that can sit there across the table and talk about them. We have gotten to such a, degradation in our system to where people gravitate, unfortunately, and the messaging gets amplified to elect those people instead of kind of like what I was talking about earlier, the guys that are further down that might be the true great businessmen, the true great national security experts, the true people that are actually, loyal to the Constitution, loyal to the American ideals. That's who you want instead of somebody that's might give good sound bites on Fox News or CNN. Yeah. So to answer you had a question in the middle of that, how long is it going to take to turn? I have no idea. What I do know is I'm a believer in, and I talked to this over with my sailors all through my career. It's all about, bending the curve. And when you're going the wrong direction, you have to bend the curve and start building inertia back in the right direction. And so we're at that point now to where I give President Trump a lot of credit for the disruption that he's tried to bring to our system. because he recognized that there's things that are broken. The centralization of power in DC is abysmal, and until we decentralize that and decentralize the budgets, to make it where it's not lucrative and from a power and money point of view for you to go to Washington, and it's a true service again to go and serve for 2 to 6 to 10 years and then come home, because nobody should serve for more than 12 years in my mind. That should be an absolute top level limit. He recognized that he had to disrupt it. And so when you are a disruptor on his level with his type of personality, it's not going to be pretty. Yeah. But what's important about for the rest of us is what comes after, because he is a time in history. He's disrupted. He's brought about a bunch of good change, but there's also a lot of polarity that's been driven between the Obama years to him. Our nation has just torn itself apart between those two kind of entities. And we have to somehow start electing representatives and presidents that can at least talk through our differences and get to balanced budgets. That one is so huge. We've accustomed ourselves to spending over $1 trillion more than we bring in every year, and all that means is ultimately a collapse. There's no way around it, and inflation is just going to keep going up. And if we can avoid a hyperinflation scenario, that'll be a miracle at some point. So
yeah. Let me ask you a fun question about submarines. I mean, like, visibility down to those depths, like, can you see anything? Not really, right?
I mean, they depend on the water clarity that you're in. Like we do what you call clearing baffles. So when you're coming to periscope depth and sticking your pole out of the water and looking around and seeing what's up there, you'll clear the baffles to make sure you hear everyone around you. You do some what's called target motion analysis to understand what tankers are driving where, and then you pick your course to come up on safely. If you're in good clear waters when you're down there, we'll just say at 160 feet, you can see water around. I'll see fish around, and on the way up, you'll see fish swimming by your periscopes. But once you get the water clarity is bad, more than a couple hundred feet, and it's just deep darkness.
You ever bump into like just extremely large fish and stuff? And
yes,
yeah,
yes. And you feel, when they kind of rumble down the hole, you can feel it.
They try to like bite the ship or the sub or anything?
No, I think sometimes they just like swimming with us, And when we pull in to go through Chesapeake Bay and we're pulling in on the surface, the dolphins love coming, playing, jumping on your bow. I got all kinds of footage of dolphins just jumping on the bow wake that we form as we're going through the water, because they love running with us. And you see big whales come up next to us, and so
that's neat.
Yeah, it is.
Have you taken some good pictures?
Oh, I got so many videos and pictures. I actually need to get organized with it sometime and do something good with it.
Is there anything else you want to cover on the campaign or the?
On the campaign,
or Senate wise?
To me, what I fundamentally hammer every time is the trust factor. And trust, that's why I said you could do a whole podcast on trust and the limbic system and what trust means between two individuals. But, one of the hardest things for me, and this gets to the scaling of whether I can win, get into a runoff or not, is if people don't know you, it's hard for them to trust you.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm trying to maximize who can, spend that enough amount of time with me to earn their trust, and then repeat, keep earning it as I make decisions, and they say, he's who I believed he was. Because it's the hardest thing in this game is you don't get to spend, all day, every day with like a submarine crew that I work with, and you earn their trust rapidly because they see you care about them. You see you make good decisions for them, and you give them clarity. You tell them no when they have to be told no. And so you build a good trust very quickly there. Now it's a whole different dynamic, but fundamentally, when everyone is losing trust in government, we have to do something absolutely different by looking very hard as citizens on who has the potential and the right skill sets and moral compass to truly be trustworthy in that office. And that's until we do that across, at least to get a quorum of people that have been elected based on that, and not because they can raise great money or because they're politically connected or they're independently wealthy. I just don't see much changing from a trust in government level. And so that's where the future of our republic becomes, how long we're celebrating 250 years this year, but how many more decades are we going to be able to say that, we're going to turn over something better to our children or grandchildren than we inherited, because we're right on that tipping point right now.
Yeah. Have you had anyone come up to you at any of these events and kind of tell you what you want to hear? Like, hey, I wasn't sure about you, but I really liked what you had to say. Or
it happens every time,
good.
Every event. Yeah. So it's but again, it's every one of those matters. And what I ask them to do is just go tell 5 people, and then tell 5 more people, because that's how a small fire becomes a big fire, and you start spreading. Because that's what I can't do it on my own. There's no way, and it's not meant to be done on your own. You're supposed to work together with teammates and people that believe in something, and spread the word. So,
hey, on your hat, on your logo, the 3 stars, that are above Seth. What do those represent?
You're the first person that's asked me that.
Really?
Yeah, and actually on the you'll see on my signs there's. Because we had to do them differently because it's embroidered, but on my other signs, there's 3 stars in one of the letters too, like Seth.
And 1 star in the middle is bigger than the other 2, right?
Yeah. So the 3 stars means various things, because there's some personal things that it means to me. I could get into theological things it means to me, but from this particular campaign. It means I tell you now, since you're the first person to ask, it means 2 different things to me. The 3 things that I call myself by is a person, citizen, sailor, and so it's who I am as a person, uniquely created by God, and then who I am as a citizen and what my duties and responsibilities as a citizen are, and then what I do professionally to help my community, my state, my nation, the republic I love, and the economy. So it's that on a personal level, but then it also, to me, represents in government checks and balances. The 3 branches of government, and how they're supposed to, in a well executed or a well functioning government, which we don't have right now. They act as good checks and balances on each other and do what's right for the American citizen and not what's right for Washington. Yeah. So it's checks and balances is what it's the 3 is meant to be.
And you got 3 boys.
Yep. That's another, see, I said that's in my personal category. Yeah. 3 boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely, has multiple meanings, but I appreciate you asking, because you're the first one that's asked that.
Why is the middle star bigger than the other 2?
That one gets more into the theological.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I say that because I remember I was telling you before we hit record, I used to work at NCTC, and I was working in a 4-highs program, and we had a system that I was in charge of where we shared finished intelligence with each other, right? And we go to these conferences, and I would make like a PowerPoint, right? And totally didn't mean to offend anybody, and you put the flags on the PowerPoint because it looks cool and everything. And they're like, "Hey, why is our flag smaller?" And they're like, "It's smaller."
I didn't know.
And they're
it
like,
was.
"It's noticeably smaller." I'm like, "Listen, I'm sorry.
It was not planned.
The American flag's bigger." Yeah. Like, okay, well, we're the ones funding this whole dang thing,
Yeah. No, that's I totally know what you get there, because sometimes you do have things that you had no planned symbology behind it.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you asked, because this one does have multiple meanings behind it.
Well, it usually does, especially when we have a logo, right? You're like, what does that mean? And the colors, and you got to have a little blue, a little red, red, white, and blue.
Yeah. And then there's always the personal, intimate things that it means. Then it's what you share too with the public.
Because someone's always going to take. It'll surprise you when someone's like, "I can't believe." I am sorry, I didn't ever think about that as a concern.
Yeah. So did you ever think about the China thing? What's coming up?
No, I didn't. It's okay. It was something in the long game. But I can't remember why.
Yeah, I would just throw a couple of thoughts out there on it, whether it's around whatever question you were trying to formulate or not. But they do play the long game, and they have the system that allows them to play a long game, because it's so they're the epitome of centralized power. If we want to have that much long game vision, we can give all of our freedom and authority over to a sovereign, communist party. I don't vote for that. That is not what we want. So since we don't have that right now, I'll just give you a stat that means a lot to me in the maritime world, because a war with China is going to be very much heavy in the maritime domain, the South China Sea. It's going to be in the air domain. It's going to be in space and cyber. That's really where a war with China is going to happen. The land forces should be minimal in it, because we just can't even compete with them from a land force point of view, fighting in their backyard. Just not going to happen. So the maritime component is what I'm most familiar with. And you just look at...
That's the Indo-PACOM stuff, right?
Yeah.
That whole region?
Yeah. Indo-PACOM, and then just our shipbuilding industry capacity is just so broken right now. We've been investing billions into it in the recent decade to try to build it back up. But just simple numbers, for every submarine that we build right now, nuclear-powered submarine, they're building at least like 1.5, and they actually have the capacity to build faster. Every commercial shipping vessel we build, they can build 200 of them. And so we'll build 5-6 commercial ships a year as a nation and have less than 1% of the world's market. They'll build 1,000 and have over 50% of the world's market. So what happens if you think back to what happened in World War II with Freedom's Forge and everything? We turned all that production capacity of automobiles, airplanes, whatever we were making that was commercial, we turned into the war machine, and that's how we won a massive war of attrition against Japan and Germany. The everything is backwards now for us from that point of view. We're the ones that are trying to rebuild that capacity. Our adversary now has the capacity. So that's why we have to deter that war. We have to maintain. We still have certain asymmetric advantages that is keeping that war from happening, and we have to protect those long enough to where we can build our production capacity back up to get more of an even field, and hopefully even just get through this next decade of true danger, and hopefully China and Taiwan figure out how to just live status quo for a long time. But it's just sad. As a guy that believes in American industry and believes in American, sovereign national security, that we let ourselves, through the decisions of our own government, get to a point to where we can only make, less than 10 ships a year. It's a national security failure. And
has it been not having the budget, the funding for it? It's not a priority?
It's a combination of that, and then just, we price ourselves out of the market to where everything's cheaper to be built overseas. Yeah. And so, so there's all kinds of forces that come behind it between, labor rates, labor unions, regulations, environmental concerns, all the things that when you advance as a nation, you get there and you have first world problems and you care about things that you didn't maybe care about before. And some of those things are good, but when you price yourself out of a market and you send all this capacity overseas to Japan and Korea and China, so that we essentially took everything that we used to do and sent it to where we fought World War II.
Are they building our ships?
Which ships? You talking about the commercial ships? Yes.
Yeah, commercial.
Yeah, they obviously don't build our military ships.
Yeah, right.
But that's really all we have left. A shipbuilding industry is our military ships. We don't have really any commercial shipbuilding industry, which means we can't pivot to a military production if we needed to.
Right. Because exactly what like you said, I think Ford started making tanks. In the war. Right?
All the different assembly lines got reconfigured to fight for freedom instead of sell the car at the local dealership.
Well, I was talking to Sean about we made the unfortunate. We hired a Russian company to build our embassy in Russia, and guess what? It was full of bugs in the mortar and all the stuff. And you're like, well, they figured it out later and said, okay, we're gonna have to build a new one by the U.S. And you're like, well, like all from a cyber security thing and a supply chain risk. Anytime you have someone else build something for you, even if it's commercial. Well,
absolutely.
What are they laying in there, right? To monitor us or
that's why we're so in our military hardware. We're so, at least in the worlds that I've operated in, we're very, very strict about tracking the supply chain down to the tier 4, 5, and 6 suppliers, because those and you get into CFIUS cases and all that stuff to make sure the company that's owned right now by an American doesn't all of a sudden get bought by a Russian or a Chinese entity that now has some sort of to some piece component that goes into one of our systems.
Yeah.
So it's you got to watch all that stuff because it's real. And the Chinese and Russians they never ever stop trying to find breach the armor.
I think you made this comment at that candidate forum. I think when it came to like immigration and stuff, like, well, what we need to do is look at, you can't let a Chinese family come in here on a visa or whatever, stay for a while, have a child.
That is insane.
And then that's the long game now, where it's like, well, wait a minute. Now they basically have a child that's a U.S. citizen, right? And born in the soil. And then eventually they're going to change their documents. And then all the while, you're going to find out 15, 20 years from now why they were really sent here.
Yeah. That was the whole 14th Amendment reinterpretation question at the forum. And it makes absolutely no common sense. So, again, we can differ on immigration policies and everything else, but we should all as Americans agree on a fundamental thing, that just the pure intent of citizenship comes responsibility. And why would we reward a Chinese mother and father that came here on a highly expensive vacation just to have a child born in an American hospital? Why does that son all of a sudden or daughter get citizenship to where they can come back at will then into our country and have free access to American, everything? That makes no sense. And so we have to, no matter what we decide in the rest of the immigration world, we have to put national security as a high priority and stop things like that, because that is not what our forefathers and coming out of the Civil War ever dreamed when they put that 14th Amendment in place. It had nothing to do with, people going on vacation to have a baby in the U.S. and then claim citizenship. That's just fundamentally wrong. And of course, China's not going to let us do that there.
Right.
So we got to be smarter than that.
Well, and our Australian brethren are dealing with that. With China,
it's huge.
They've bought, their students, their children are learning English, are going into Australia, to be educated, and they're buying real estate like crazy. Yeah. And just completely infiltrated that whole continent.
Yeah. Well, China, a final thought on China. Yeah. They don't want a war. They are, they know the risk of war. They know that wars are unpredictable. They know that once a war starts, the outcomes can go completely the wrong direction, and it changes they're sitting here at the tail end of what they consider their millennia of humiliation. They were used to be the greatest center kingdom, and now they're trying to restore that after all these millennia of being humiliated, destructed, and overcome by other empires and everything else. So they don't want a war.
Yeah.
So they're playing the long game, to your point, of what can they do to impact the decision-making and the readiness of all the U.S. and U.S. aligned part of the world, to where when they do decide to move, there's neither the political will nor the military capability to really challenge them. Yeah. And so if they can do that, and if they can get people inside the different countries, and that's one of the vectors that they use, having people inside countries to where they have access to, whether it's even inside our own teams or whatever. Because if you're an American citizen and you can grow up and be properly vetted, I'll give you a quick thing that I dealt with personally when I had command of USS Scranton. I was noticing that my sonar technicians, which is a division of about 12 or 13 sonar techs with the highest classifications, they're the ones understand the missions we're doing, who we're going against, all that. So very high classification levels. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I noticed that there were several of those, like I think the number, it's a decade ago, I think it was 3 or 4 had married Russian women. Mm. And I was like, I raised my hand to my leadership's like, I'm not okay with this. I feel like we're being targeted. I feel like something is going on here. And they fell back on, well, they've been properly vetted. And so I don't know, again, I don't know what vetting happened. I don't know, but just the simple fact that that's against statistics, that of my most classified division on that ship, I had multiple guys that were dating or married to Russian women. It made no sense to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you got to realize that the Chinese and the Russians are going to play those avenues every chance they can get, because everything gives them one more little advantage, one more little option.
Sean was just talking about how in Silicon Valley right now, a lot of Russian women are approaching the CEOs of company, the big AI stuff and whatever else. Like, oh, that's interesting. Like, we're kind of like, listen, generally, if you're a guy and, whatever your age is, and some hot woman approaches you, something's up.
Yeah. There's a plan.
Right?
You have to immediately assume that's not because you're attractive.
Some good looking guy.
Yeah. No, that's something we need to be sensitive about here in our own state too, because in this push for, AI and all that stuff, those are national security threat vectors, and because those machines are so powerful, and there's going to be so many things tied to different things across the whole AI cloud, that we got to really look at who's doing what, and who's behind the companies, and you can't just take it at face value. Generally, it's one thing I learned when we looked at suppliers. You have to do really good due diligence to look. Okay, they have the face, but what's behind the face? Who are the real money people? Where are the boards really? Where did that start? What's the history of the company?
Yeah,
and you got to have people that dig into it and actually question it. And don't just look at it from, it's going to be great for our economy. Well, you got to look at China will gladly build something great for our economy if it gives them a threat vector into our nation. Same thing with Russia.
You're going to see a lot of government agencies and companies pull back and say, you know what, we're putting this out of the cloud with the AI stuff. We're going to bring that back on-prem.
Yeah,
just to be as safe as possible.
Yeah,
it's very unpredictable.
Yeah. You just don't want to, as much as I am for growing the economy, you can't do it blindly. Yeah. And you have to be very suspicious about every entity, especially come with a deal that sounds really good.
Sure.
Kind of like if you get approached by somebody that's really, really pretty, if you get approached with this deal, you can't turn it down. You got to wonder why.
Yeah.
So,
do you have any final thoughts? Any shout outs? Other than to your wife, right?
No,
shout out to her.
She's amazing. I shout out to her all the time because, to what you brought up earlier, people don't realize what I'll just call it a Navy spouse because that was our experience, but a military spouse, what they do, especially when you ask them to do it over a 3-decade career. Because when it was all said and done of that 3 decades, she did it by herself for almost a full decade of it. We counted it up, and it was right between 9 and 10 years that I was away from her during that period. And she was doing it with, a special needs son. So I can't ever sing her praises enough. I owe her everything, and she stuck with us. And she, as much as a patriot and believer in this American idea that I am, she's just as much of that because she's sacrificed so much. And that's where, if we were to do this, and go to the Senate, people can truly trust that we have no ulterior motives. We love our state and we love our nation so much, and we just want our kids and grandkids to be able to trust their government, not be financially driven into the ground and have no future economically. I want them to be able to live on one income, because it was hard for us to live on one income, but now it's almost impossible to have any quality of life on one income. So that is a complete breakdown of, how we've set our economy up and set the policies up to where we don't even give them a good choice. Now, if a couple decides they want to work, that's totally good. But we should have an economy that's set up to where if you want to invest in that next generation, your children full time, you should have that option too.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be forced into, just because you want to have a normal American dream, you both got to pay $3,000 a month childcare and go get 2 high-paying jobs just to survive.
I thought about when you, I guess when you went back to that 2-star and had your proposal going back to the
the circadian rhythm stuff.
The circadian rhythm stuff, and I guess that had been a while since you had raised it, and he was like, you know what? I've been thinking about it. I've been really tired my whole 20 years. He's just thinking back how difficult the job is and how tired he was. And I think about that a lot, just in order for us to have a single income in the DC area and to want to also have a house, I had a long commute. We had to like go out to counties away, right? And I would drive in, and I just, you get up at 4:30 to drive by 5 to drive an hour, and you're just like, I am so tired, all the time. And then you're home at 6 or 7 because of the traffic, And it's like, what am I?
And it's brutal up there.
What am I doing? And it's just been nice to come here, and it might have been the same if I had only been 20 and I was starting my career here, but man, that was a sacrifice to just kind of provide the way of life we wanted for our kids.
Yep.
And our
we
family.
did the same sort of thing. We always picked where we were going to live. I was the sacrificial anode, whatever I had to do to make sure they had the right environment for my wife to be with the kids when I'm gone, and what schools they wanted. That was the priority. And if I had to drive extra, I was driving extra because honestly, I was going to be underway a lot of the time anyway. So you should never, in my case, I should never plan around my luxury because it was just, but something you said a while ago, it cued my mind, but I'm having my old person moment now, and I can't remember what it was.
It happens.
Yeah.
Well, Seth Burton, May 19th, right?
May 19th. Yep.
I continue to wish you all the best. So today we got a little over a month.
Yeah. I think it's 5 weeks from this Tuesday, or from tomorrow, because today's Monday. So
the grind is here, right? You're grinding away.
It's nonstop. Yeah. It's something every day. So it's just going.
And I really appreciate you taking time out to come over here to Madison.
No, I appreciate this because, the forums and all that stuff are fantastic, but just being able to sit and talk, and go down a rabbit hole or talk about things, that's important. I mean, just talking about single income, raising kids in a single income, that's important, because to me, again, when you're looking at candidates and you're trying to figure out, one of our major problems in our government is just discipline. Yeah. Our representatives have no discipline to stay with at least close to a balanced budget. And so why don't we try people that have demonstrated over decades that they can do it, because we chose to have less income all those years, but we found a way to be disciplined, pay our kids through college, get them through college, and now shift into a next phase of life, still on one income, and then be able to take time like this off from work just to try to do something for our fellow citizens in the country. So give people like that, again, that might not be in the power broker circles. I can't offer you the big backroom deals that the other guys might can offer you. Congressman Moore says all the time, I can call Donald Trump right now and answer my phone calls. I can't do that. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to represent the U.S. citizen of Alabama as good or better than he will. So, I'm looking forward to running hard till May 19th. And then I trust the voters to select their 2 people to go to a runoff. And my hope is that I'm in that runoff, and then the whole race changes at that point, because now everybody has to recalculate, reset, and now it's a 2-man race to June.
I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Troy. It's been great just getting to know you in this short little bit, and just sharing stories.
I'm a huge snowboarder, so Burton is an awesome name. I have no idea if you have any ties to Burton.
No, especially when we lived in Europe, we got asked all the time, because Burton's not a normal name over in Europe, obviously, and they would say, Burton Snowboards? And I was like, unfortunately, no. So I have no connection to them. I wish I did sometimes, but we're just, we grew up very, very, very simple people.
Yeah. Thanks for being so open and transparent.
Absolutely.
And I really hope you get elected so that I can at least say, hey, I've interviewed that guy.
No, you would have free access to me. That's because that's one big thing that I want to assure, the citizens here. I believe to trust someone, you have to be able to access them, and they have to be transparent, and they have to be able to shoot, because I will tell people when I can't do what they want me to do, and I'll tell them why. I've done that my whole career. Sailors and people want and need things all the time. Sometimes I can give it to them, sometimes I can't. That's a part of building trust. And so you would always have my phone to call me up. Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Troy.
All the best to you and your family.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.